It is so frustrating when your sewing machine starts acting up and you get tangled threads and skip stitches. In this video, I'll show you the 10 most common threading mistakes that are causing these problems and how to fix them so you get perfect stitches every time. Let me know in the comments which of these are the biggest thorn in your side. An incorrect threading path is a common reason to get these skip stitches or tangled threads. So most sewing machines have a similar thread path, but you should always read your manual to make sure how your sewing machine is thread and make sure you haven't skipped any stitches, because it's very important that the thread is going through all the proper paths and through the tension discs so you get good stitching. Hand in hand with threading the machine is to raise the presser foot before beginning threading. When you raise the presser foot, this releases the tension in those tension discs and allows your thread to go freely through these discs. And that then allows you to have nice, smooth stitches because you have proper tension. And as we're on the topic of tension, you should also consider the tension discs that is on your machine. Now, I typically leave it at 4, which is where it came out of the box, but I also work with very similar weighted fabrics. So if you do not, if you go from very light fabrics to very heavy fabrics like denim, and you're having difficulties with your stitches, you should consider adjusting this. So heavier fabrics will require a higher tension and lighter fabrics will require a lower tension. What you'll find though, if your tension is too high, you can get puckered stitches, and if your tension is too low, you have the possibility of having loose or slipped stitches. And as we're on the topic of thickness of your fabric, it's important that you match your needle size to your fabric weight. So when you have a thicker or heavier weight fabric, you'll want to use a higher number or a thicker needle. And if you have a very lightweight fabric, you'll use a lower number needle or a thinner needle. So if you use a needle that's too thick, you potentially can get puckers, and if you use a needle that's too thin, potentially your thread is going to break. I've created a guide that includes all the information that you need to choose the right needle, what type of needle, whether it's universal or ballpoint, what size of the needle. So you can get a link to that free guide in the description below. You can see the cover of the needle package can be confusing as to what everything means. The brand shows up first. I like Schmidt needles. Under that is the needle type. You will likely be using universal needles most of the time, but if you sew with knits, you would likely want to use a stretch needle or a ballpoint needle. The numbers 130/705H is the code always used for home sewing machine needles. So you'll see that on all your packaging. And at the bottom, you'll see the numbers that indicate size, whether they're large or small needles. The top number is the European sizing and the bottom number is the US sizing. The smaller the number, the thinner the needle. If you look closely, you can see the colored bands at the top of the needle. The top color is for the needle type, whether it's universal, stretch, ballpoint, and the bottom color is for the needle size. This graphic is from Schmidt, which shows the colors for all the options. Now we'll move on to the bobbin. It's important to properly wind your bobbin on your machine. If you have uneven or loose or tangled threads around your bobbin, it can lead to uneven tension, tangles, and just poor stitch quality. And with your bobbin, you want to make sure you place it in the casing in the proper direction. So whether the thread goes this way or the thread winds around that way, you should look at your manual and it'll tell you which way. On my machine, you also have a little graphic right next to the bobbin case that will show me, and I refer to that every time I put the bobbin in, just so I make sure I'm not putting the bobbin in incorrectly, because if you put the bobbin in with the thread going the wrong direction, it will really lead to poor stitches. And surprisingly, there is a variety of sizes for bobbins. It's not very obvious. I have bobbins from my current Brother machine and bobbins from my old Singer machine, and they look almost identical. You have to look very, very closely to see that the one is slightly thicker than the other. So I keep the two bobbin very separate in separate areas so I don't get them mixed up, because that will lead to poor stitch quality. And once you get the bobbin into the case properly, you will want to raise the bobbin thread up by turning the hand wheel, and it'll bring it up and it'll go alongside the upper thread. You want those two connected so you get proper stitches. Now, my machine doesn't require that I do that. I can do it, and I do sometimes, but the instructions are I have this little channel that I can leave the thread in and just start sewing, and I do not have to raise it. So read your manual. Again, as everything, the manual is very important because every machine is slightly different, even though they're all very similar, and see what your machine's capability is for this. This one I think is a little less common, and I've never done it, but I thought I'd throw it in. So make sure that you thread the needle from front to back so you get good stitches. Now, I think it would be a little awkward to thread it the other way, but just make sure you're threading it front to back, and then you'll get good stitches. And lastly, as you're threading the machine on the upper path, you want to make sure that your thread is taut. If you have it's very slack as you're trying to thread through, the tension will not be accurate. So avoid that and keep it taut as you're pulling through. Sometimes I spool any extra thread back onto my spool, so I don't have all this extra thread as I'm trying to thread the machine. If you want to learn more about sewing, YouTube has chosen this video just for you. I hope these tips will help you avoid some of these common and frustrating mistakes and make your stitches like perfect every time. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe because it really helps my channel. And if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below and I will answer everyone. Thank you.